Back with Benjamin Netanyahu, the former Prime Minister of Israel, talking a little fear-mongering here with Glenn Beck. What a surprise. We ended with my belief that you're being set up to make because you're going to, well, let me ask you. Are you going to make a move if nobody else does on Iran? Do you feel that you would have to make a move if nobody else does to stop them?
If that's the only option, it has to be stopped. And if it means saving the life of the Jewish state and another 6 million Jews who live in Israel, then the answer is yes, because we reserve the right to live. The Jewish people are not going to be set up again for a second Holocaust by a man who denies the first Holocaust as he prepares our mass annihilation. What would you do? Suppose somebody said, we're going to bomb America. We're going to destroy America. And you sit back and you say, oh, he doesn't mean it. And he prepares, and he does mean it. You're going to sit back and let him do it?
I had to tell you, I've said this several times before, and no offense, Canada, because I know we've got a lot of Canadian listeners, but you'd be toast. I mean, if we had somebody sitting on our border saying the same thing that people on your border are saying, oh, we'd roll over them with a steamroller. But what does that mean? I mean, let's say you go in, they're so far underground, do you A, have the capability of doing this, and B, if you did, what does that do to the Middle East and the whole world?
I think that it's not particularly useful to discuss these kinds of questions. I would say that there's a time factor. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes. The more firepower you need. The earlier you do it, and you may even, the earlier you do it, you can actually avoid the need for military action. If you had, for example, a concerted international effort, you'd probably get Iran to back off. But the longer you wait, the more you have to get into the harder options, and the harder the options become. And I think that is unfortunate. But you ask me, what will the world look like if action were taken against Iran by us or by you? Would they retaliate? Yeah, of course, but they wouldn't have nuclear weapons to retaliate with. You do not you do not want them to have these atomic bombs.
I get that. I get that. I'm with you. However, you know, when you say you can go in and take it, and people will rise up. I was talking to James Baker, and I said, how much trouble is Europe in? Europe is. We think of these. Oh well, we'll just be able to rely on our European allies. My gosh, if the Muslim extremists that are in the center of those cities all throughout Europe ever decide to rise up and connect, the armies of Europe are going to be too busy in Europe doing guerrilla warfare street to street.
But it's an interesting question. There are Muslim communities interspersed now throughout the world and throughout Europe as well. Many of them, most of them are peaceable people.
Yes.
Okay, but there's an extremist core. The extremist core gets more extreme as the two virulent strains of militant Islam get more and more powerful. When they knock out the World Trade Center, they get new adherents. When Iran acquires nuclear weapons, they get more adherents. So the Muslim communities around the world are looking at it. They're sitting in the bleachers and they're looking at this and they're saying, who's winning? The West, the forces of civilization as we understand it, or the militants? If the militants appear to be succeeding, then the ability to recruit more radicals in Europe and elsewhere, in the United States, grows.
Well, that's because they have an understanding that the reason why they are still living the way they are with sticks and stones is because they haven't been militant enough in their own religion, that they haven't submitted enough to Sharia law, etc., etc.
I'm not sure. I think it's actually the other way around. I think that if they see them winning, then they say, Allah is with us. That means that the direction of extremism has a future. What you want to do is actually create despair in the militants. You want to create despair that nothing will succeed. You will never defeat the West. Even if we have setbacks, the free societies, this pluralistic free societies that we have, will defeat you. Your way of this pre-medieval crazy creed that you have, it's not going to govern the world. There's no chance that it will govern the world because the free societies are much tougher than you think. When they think that, they can't recruit. When they think the opposite, they do recruit. It's very important that they understand they're going to lose, and early.
Okay, now we've talked about millions of people possibly dying in World War III and the nuclear holocaust and another holocaust for the Jews. But now let me get to the tough question.
That was the easy part.
That was the easy part. Here's the tough question. I am so frustrated, and I said you were going to be on. I got so much email from people asking me the same question that we can't figure out. Why is it that it seems as though conservatives are the ones that are the most strong on the protection of Israel? We're the strongest in defense, and yet so many Jews here in America are so on fire liberal, and they side with the people, the politicians, who are ready to just give away the candy store. I don't understand it, and so many Americans don't. What is it that they can't see? Who's willing to stand up and think it's important to defend Israel?
There's a difference of opinion, obviously, on what is the right sort of defense. And I'm not going to get into that. I mean, Jewish Americans... I told you
it was going to be the hard question.
Jewish Americans are loyal Americans. They just have a different...
No, I'm not saying...
They have differences among them. You know, some of the staunchest conservatives in the United States are Jewish, and some of the staunchest liberals are Jewish. So there are different views. I have enough in my politics in Israel with not to get into, into American politics. And I have enough Jewish politics in Israel. Right. By the way, more than you can imagine.
Then let me go here on politics where I think you're a little more free to talk. The United Nations. Holy cow, I don't understand the United Nations. I don't understand. I don't even understand. When I went to Israel for the first time, it was after 9/11, and I really wanted to understand. And I went to Israel, and I went up to the Israeli-Lebanon border. And I was standing there, and I saw a billboard with beheaded Israeli soldiers, and underneath in Hebrew it said something along the lines of "Sharon, your dogs die here," and it was one of the most shocking, I'm an American, one of the most shocking things I had ever seen, and it was sitting next to a little like pillbox area, and it had two flags. It had the Lebanese flag
and the UN flag.
And the UN flag.
Right.
What does that say to you?
It says to me that the UN is a pretty good separation between consenting adults. If you have two governments who want to make peace between them and they put a tripwire, a UN tripwire, basically symbolizing their agreement to make peace, then the UN works. Anywhere where you have real combat, anywhere where you have real enemies, anywhere where you have a crazy outfit like Hezbollah, which is really a proxy for Iran that we're talking about, then the UN is fairly useless. Doesn't really get the job done. And that billboard was a perfect example. Lebanon was ignited by the kidnapping of a few of our soldiers. The previous kidnapping...
seemed to get lost in the shuffle.
Well, the previous kidnapping took place, there was a previous kidnapping of 3 of our soldiers by Hezbollah, and the UN was there. You know what the UN did? Photographed it. So what are they going to do? Bring bigger cameras to photograph it and to have bigger billboards? I mean, this is not... I think the UN is of limited value. It started out as a wonderful idea, but the UN is a reflection of its components. And if there's not enough political will to actively face down the extremists, the radicals, the murderers, the killers in the world, then the UN can't really do the job. It's left to the free societies to do it, unfortunately. Then
let me go here. We have to take a break, but when we come back, I want to ask you about political will. There were a lot of us rooting for Israel over the summer and saw the way the war was fought and saw the concessions made and were horrified. Your answer to that here in just a second.